comes from Matthew 15, verses 21 to 28. Jesus left that place and went away to the district of Tyre and Sidon. Just then, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and started shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." But he did not answer her at all. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, "Send her away, for she keeps shouting at us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt down before him, saying, "Lord, help me." He answered, "It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed instantly.
Please be seated.
Hello, everyone. Just to get that out of the way.
Hey,
I have a question for all of you. What comes to mind when you hear the word powerful? Think about it. Shout it out if you want.
Tyson.
Well, I got one that I bet none of you thought of, and that's crumb. Now, you're probably thinking, wow, this kid's first time preaching, and I can already tell that he's crazy. And while I wouldn't blame you if you thought that, let me tell you a story about just how powerful a crumb can be. When we think of amazing and powerful things, most of us think big and great, but that isn't always the case. A couple years ago, I was really interested in old cars, as some of us were when we were kids. I loved everything about them, how loud they were, how fast they could go, and just everything about them made me want one of my own. And as this obsession grew as I got older, but by the time I was 13, I started watching this TV show about fixing old cars, and I was hooked instantly. I would watch it whenever I got the chance. I was amazed by how these people could take a rusty old car that didn't even run and turn it into a shiny new machine ready to be sold for lots of money. So, obviously, I wanted to have my own car. Of course, I was way too young to have enough money to buy myself a nice car or even have a driver's license. But my dream was still alive and well. So I continued to watch shows about fixing up classic cars until eventually I came across my favorite car ever. It was the 1969 Chevy Impala. This car was so amazing to me that I started to think of any way I could have one for myself. Then one day I was walking through a store with my mom when I saw it. It was the model of the Chevy Impala that I'd seen before, and I knew I just had to have it. So with some saved up birthday money, I bought the car and brought it home. But I knew I wouldn't be able to assemble this car because it was very complicated and I was 13. So I called the only person I knew that had absolutely nothing to do during the day, who happened to be my grandpa, who is also a full-time farmer. But he was still willing to help me put it together, so I brought it out to the farm and we started taking all the little parts out of the box. And as we took all the parts out, I noticed that there was no way to click the pieces together because I was expecting something like Lego, but obviously that was not the case. So I asked Grandpa, "How do we put it together?" He looked at me kind of like, are you serious? And he said, "Well, probably glue." So I went and got the glue and brought it back, but I couldn't help but think, how in the world are we going to get enough glue on these tiny little pieces to make them stick together? And I started to doubt what my grandpa had said. And I think as Christians, we struggle with this kind of thing, where God has told us of his power and his plan for us, but we still don't trust the plan fully because of doubt and fear we have in our hearts. But that is why he gives us reminders of his power through stories found throughout the Bible. And as we started to put this car together, I started to witness the true power and strength that these little tiny drops of glue had to hold this car together. It didn't take a lot of glue, but just the littlest amount for me to see just how much it could do. The same is true when we hear the stories about Jesus and his miracles. Most people asking for him to perform these miracles likely expect it to take a lot of power to perform these wonderful acts. But all it takes is just a crumb of his power, which is displayed perfectly in the Holy Gospel today. Starting in the first verse, we are told that Jesus is leaving Galilee after being confronted by the Pharisees from Jerusalem about the laws. Since Jesus was in Galilee, there were also large crowds of Jews who were there to listen to his parables and witness his miracles. After preaching to those Pharisees and to his followers, he leaves Galilee and travels towards Tyre and Sidon for some rest and privacy, because Jesus is fully human and humans need a rest to function. Now, how many of you here today can work 24/7, 365 without needing any rest? Put your hands up. Yeah, none of you, exactly. But he goes to Tyre and Sidon, which are known as evil and wicked places because of the population of Canaanites, who were not followers of the God of Israel. Now, in the Old Testament, these Canaanites were described as wicked and evil people with very wicked practices, like intense idolatry towards other gods and statues, sacrificing their own children, and pagan rituals which were used as contrary to the Bible. These acts that the Canaanites were doing led God to command the Israelites to drive them out of the land of Canaan that they originally occupied. Obviously, the Israelites and the Canaanites wouldn't get along if they just kicked them out of their land, right? So, since then, the Canaanites had continued to practice their own religion and had not occupied the same place as the Jews. This meant that the Israelites and Canaanites had a sort of division and didn't respect each other. This led the Canaanites to occupy the district of Tyre and Sidon, which is where Jesus is leaving to go in the gospel. He goes to this place to seek refuge from the crowds and does not want anyone knowing where he was, as it tells us in Mark chapter 7, which is the same story from the account of Mark. Because he was moving away from the land of the Israelites, he was hoping to stay hidden and rest. This was not the case, however, because he was immediately found by this Canaanite woman. Now, this in itself is a great statement of faith from this Canaanite woman, because it shows that this woman, even though she likely did not witness any of the miracles that Jesus had performed, she still had such great faith that she fell at his feet. Many people watched Jesus perform these miracles and still did not believe he was the Son of God. But this woman simply heard rumors and stories of what Jesus of Nazareth was doing. She had such great faith that she completely humbled herself in front of Jesus. And when she spoke to him, the gospel clearly states that she did not just politely ask him to heal her daughter, but she shouts at him, "Have mercy on me, son of David." This was a risky move for her, because although she shared the same land as her fellow people, the Canaanites, she did not share the same beliefs and would most likely have been seen as lesser because of her great faith, or even killed for her great faith in what Jesus could do. But that great faith was all she needed, because she knew in her heart and her mind that Jesus was the only one who could save her daughter. But Jesus does not give the response we're used to hearing. Most of us, myself included, are used to hearing the stories of people asking him to perform miracles, and he does it joyfully without even a thought, completely. But this story is very different. Jesus ignores her completely. How many times in our own lives do we think, God didn't answer my prayer, he must just be ignoring me, right? And when we think that, it's easy to start wondering if he just doesn't care. But he does. He cares about us so much that he sent his only son to die on the cross that we might have eternal life with him. Of course, nobody at this time knew that he was going to do that, which I think makes this story even more amazing, because this woman gives a response that I think truly shows her faith, even as a Canaanite. She stays persistent. She doesn't give up. She doesn't just get up off the ground and throw her hands in the air and say, "Well, I tried. I guess he just doesn't care." She shows God's love for her, and she does not become lazy or doubt. She, in fact, became so loud that the disciples, the people who have witnessed Jesus' miracles firsthand, urged Jesus to send her away because she was shouting and most likely becoming irritating to them. How many of you get irritated when you hear someone shouting and crying out for no reason? I think it's a pretty common thing. So Jesus first responds to the disciples saying, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel." Now what Jesus is saying here is very interesting and a little bit confusing. If Jesus was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel, then why are there Christians all over the world? You have to understand at this time, all of this is happening. The disciples and everyone else do not know that Jesus is going to die on the cross for the sins of the world. They all think that he is going to lead Israel to be freed from Roman authority. And to them, it sounds like a pretty easy task when they have someone who can perform miracles and raise people from the dead. But what Jesus says to the disciples is actually testing them to see if they can have compassion for all people, not just other Israelites. This is also something as Christians that we should also strive to do, because we are not just called to love our church members or just our family, and while that is very important, it's also important to show Jesus' love to everyone, and I mean everyone, which is what Jesus is teaching the disciples with this woman. In fact, the Old Testament is also a great example of non-Israelites that God used in miraculous ways. In the story of Ruth the Moabite, she shows great loyalty to Naomi. Even though she was not an Israelite herself, she lived in the land of Israel and gave birth to a son named Obed, who became the grandfather of the king of David. This is just one example of how God used non-Jewish people to further the kingdom of heaven. We are also told in the Old Testament about how God has a place in heaven for all people. A good example of this is in the Old Testament reading from today, which Cole read. Which is the Lord speaking through the prophet Isaiah. He says, "And the foreigner who join themselves to the Lord, to minister to him, to love the name of the Lord, and to be his servants, all who keep the Sabbath and do not profane it, and hold fast in my covenant, these I will bring to my holy mountain." This is different from what we are used to hearing in the Old Testament, as most books in the Old Testament tell stories of God commanding his people to take over foreign lands and whoever occupies them. So why would he be preaching to these foreigners that there is a place on his holy mountain for them? The answer is very simple. Because even the Gentiles are loved by God. If that was not the case, most, if not all of us, would not be here worshiping today. God's kingdom does not just stop at the Israelites, but is for the whole world. When God says, "For my house shall be called a house of prayer for all peoples," he means all people. That means any one of us can be saved, not just the Israelites. Another instance of God using non-Israelite people to further his kingdom is the story of Rahab from the city of Jericho. Rahab was also a Canaanite woman by birth and was not a part of God's chosen people. When God told Joshua and the Israelites to take over Jericho because it was the promised land, Rahab housed the spies in exchange for the safety of her family. She was still used by God to help the Israelites take over Jericho. And for that, she even lived among the Israelites because they were so grateful for what she had done for them. God used her even though she was a Canaanite and a prostitute. She was still used by God and had great faith in him that he would protect her and her family. All these things are proof that anyone who believes in the one true God can be saved. And the Apostle Paul preaches about this in Romans 11. He tells us that he himself is an Israelite, but writes the letter to Rome that they may be saved. He went from wanting Jesus to free the Israelites from Roman authority to wanting all the Romans to join Christianity and turn their life to Christ. That is why Jesus' testing the disciples is so important in the gospel. He's teaching them that his love goes past the nation of Israel and that his word should be told to all people that they might be saved. But this was not an easy concept for the disciples to understand because of the division between the nations. But even this did not deter the woman. She came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." But Jesus continues to test her faith, saying, "It is not fair to take the children's food and give it to the dogs." This is one sentence that could be seen as an insult towards a woman. I mean, if somebody called you a dog, I probably wouldn't take that as a compliment, right? This one sentence seems like an insult, but the woman sees the true meaning of what he was saying with, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table." Now, I think it's important to add a little bit of context to better explain what this text means in order for us to really wrap our heads around it. Jesus refers to the Jews as the children at the master's table because, as he states, he was first sent for the lost sheep of Israel, not the Gentiles. This means that his word and miracles are for the Jew first, so it is not fair for God's people to be treated less than the others. But the word that Jesus used to call her a dog is not the mangy street dog, but rather the word for a little household pet. But this woman gives a powerful response when she says that she does not need much. She just needs something. This is something as Christians we should really consider. Are we expecting that big feast from Christ, or are we content with just a little crumb? The woman's faith is so strong in Jesus that she knows it only takes a crumb, just a little piece of his power to heal her daughter. So that's all she asked for. Like the woman who bled for 12 years, who only needed to touch Jesus' cloak and was instantly healed. This Canaanite, this woman is a descendant of wicked people. Yet she had such great faith from hearing only stories and rumors of this Messiah, the Son of God, that she trusts that all it will take for him to heal her daughter is to be asked and she will be healed. And Jesus does exactly that as he says to her, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done as you wish." Jesus didn't even need, and that's all it took. Jesus didn't even need to see this girl, and she was instantly healed. And when he does this for her, the woman doesn't ask him if he's serious or even question him. She just knows and goes home immediately. This was all a part of Jesus' plan to show the disciples that everyone who has faith and believes in their heart that God is the one true God may experience the grace that he offers. And this leads me to my final thought. I know, crazy short sermon, right? We are sometimes caught up in our sin and think that we have done, oh my goodness. And we think that what we have done can't be forgiven. But this woman proves that all we need is Jesus. And the strength that each and every one of us has is knowing that no one is beyond God's love and forgiveness. What a gift. Amen.